much as I say I'm going to try to be more consistent, I got the sneaking suspicion that I won't be more consistent. Real life tends to get in the way just a little too much. I think this time around, everybody must have fucked his bumper up and he's bungeeing it together. I think he was parked on the other side of the parking lot last night. Oh, what the fuck is he doing? He's hooking his bumper to the cinder block. Real life tends to keep getting in the way of doing these. Probably the realest part is having the magnet mount fuck up. The specific brand of mount that I use typically is a brand called Mag Buddy, and they're pretty good. The only issue is that they tend to, like, after a while, they no longer stick to the dashboard. Now, they're not particularly expensive to replace. Like, they're $20. They're not expensive mounts, but it seems like they're a little bit hard to find. Petro Stop, etc., seem to be the only ones that carry them. I tried a couple other versions, including one that was very obviously a spoof on this. It was called MagMate instead of Mag Buddy. And let's see what the fucking Canada Goose is here to do. Fucking things. Tried to attack my truck. Fucking idiot birds. It lasted 10 minutes. It fell apart, almost immediately. The magnet mount would not stay attached to my phone, and then the mount itself, like the dash mount, it started falling apart, like literally within 20 minutes of buying it. So clearly it was, I kind of thought maybe Mag Buddy had gotten in shit for something, so they just rebranded, but I guess that's not what that was. It was literally somebody trying to, cheaply clone the Mag Buddy system. So I said, fuck it. Found the real ones again. Bought one. Said, okay. Now we can start doing some video. So I'm in North Baltimore, Ohio, and I'm going to be headed south to Georgia. I got a fairly long day ahead of me. I'm trying to think here in the terms of miles. It's a 950 kilometer trip, so it's about 9 hours. So I guess 60 times 9. Okay, I'm gonna average around 60, maybe 70 miles an hour, depending on how the day goes. Once you get farther south, the speed limits open up a bit. I think it's 70 for most of Ohio too, so it's not so bad. I've got, from the sounds of things, our best loads that I carry at the company I'm at. I don't know, I can't remember if I've done a video since I left the tanker outfit that I worked at. But that didn't work out, and now I'm here doing flatbed work with a roll tight trailer. I had a lot of issues. Royal started, they weren't pursuing more work when their current work got slow. And this was all just before COVID-19 became real, at least in North America. So COVID wasn't the reason that work slowed down. It was the reason they eventually gave, but it wasn't the reason they slowed down. Right? COVID-19 was off the radar in North America when I was sitting at home with no work. So we ended up having less and less work, and eventually got to the point where in April, at the end of April, the company I worked at, pay structure, you would get, let's say, the 1st of March, you would get, or the 1st of, let's say, we'll go with kind of the way the timeline was. The 1st of February, you would get $5,000, and then on the 15th of February, you would get everything you made for the month of January minus the $5,000 you got on the 1st of January. Right, so my pay was a month behind, and it was always minus the $5,000 I got at the beginning of the month that I paid for, right? So when March came around, hold on, I'm just gonna jigger this magnet down a little bit, shorten it up. I thought having it stick out would be good. It's a little bit taller, but that's not so great. I think the phone tries to block it, but it vibrates a lot. That's much better. The guys, they did their on the 26th of April. They announced that they were switching, effective immediately, from a monthly pay schedule to a weekly pay schedule. They stated it was due to COVID, and they cited that it would give drivers access to more liquidity. The reason they did it is almost no driver at the company made enough money in the month of February to pay that $5,000 that were paid out on the 1st of February. Most drivers took home less than $5,000 that month, which for owner operators is like that's go bankrupt really fast money. So at that point, I decided to quit. When I received my pay statement, it said that I owed $2,800, and I'm sorry, but I don't work to pay you money. You know what I mean? Like, I don't go to work to pay money. I don't pay money to go to work, right? I go to work to get paid, right? So if I spent a month working, and I did work that month, right? It wasn't as much, but I did work, and I went out and worked for negative dollars. I leave no questions asked. There's no second chances. I'm gone, right? I've had that mindset more or less through the entirety of my owner-operator career, and it's worked well for me. When I started as a lease purchase driver for Scott Lynn, I worked there, and the first time I got a paycheck that was negative money, here's the truck back. I don't want it. I'm not putting myself in a financial shithole trying to play catch up to a company that claims that I owe them money when I worked for work that I did for them. Right? It's just not happening. So I switched to where I am, and it's been better. It's not perfect, but it has been better. But the load I have now, it's the first time I've done one of these loads, which is unusual because apparently we do them quite often. It's 3 crates. They're large crates. The total weight of all 3 crates together is about 7,000 pounds. So the truck behaves effectively as if it's empty. Like there's no weight on the trailer really at all. So it means that hopefully for most of today, I'm not going to lose a lot of speed. Going up and down hills. Like I got to go through some mountains in the south. I got to fuck around in the Smoky Mountains a little bit and stuff like that. So hopefully that means I can maintain my speed, which is sometimes a double-edged sword. Sunday might not be so bad, but usually if I go through the south, like when I've come back empty and stuff like that, I'm suddenly a semi-truck that can do 65, 70 mile an hour, but the signs for the big hills say all trucks must be in the right lane, and there's Buddy climbing the hill at fucking 25 mile an hour. I'm not going to stay in the right lane, but the cars might still be going a lot faster than I am, and you got to worry about DOT. Like I've had once in California years ago where I was empty climbing a hill, and the road was 4 lanes wide, and the 2 right lanes were trucks only. In California, it's not like the 2 right lanes are for trucks, and you shouldn't be in the left lane, but people won't necessarily give you shit if you're hour passing somebody. Like again, throughout But most of the rest of the country, it's fairly situational. If a DOT sees that you're doing 70 and, you know, the right two lanes are taken up by guys doing 40, he's not going to say anything if you go in the left lane to go around them, right? But California, they do. And I was driving and had a knock on my fucking door at fucking, you know, I was doing about like 58, 60, because California speed limit's 55. And there's a motorcycle cop. And he just points to the right, moves away from me a little bit, and then just starts driving into the side of my truck. And I had fucking, oh fuck, I'm gonna fucking kill this guy or run somebody off the road. So I had to fucking fly over to the right, cut a bunch of people off, put me in the far right lane, and then he fucked off. And at that point I had to climb the hill at 30 miles an hour with everybody else, even though I was empty. Right? I think that's kind of fucking ridiculous because, you know, I'm now losing time because of other people. It has nothing to do with me or my low weight or any of that shit. Now here it's not so bad. It just can sometimes be tricky to get into that left lane to start going around people. But I'll figure it out when I'm there. I'll need fuel eventually. I'm gonna have to take fuel, but like 3/8 of a tank of DEF. So I'll end up stopping probably before Cincinnati and getting fuel. I don't really like fucking. Once you get south of there, fuel stops start getting a little less common. I mean, not a lot. I suppose it really doesn't matter, but we'll see how it goes. I'm like 200 miles from Cincinnati, so. Sorry. I'm reading the math right now. I'm 157 miles from Cincinnati. So I'm hoping to try to do more of these vlogs now that we've got the Old Faithful out, but we'll see what happens. It's tricky sometimes. Like I look at some of the other guys that are doing or starting to do trucking YouTube vlogs, and I think part of the problem is that I have far too many hobbies outside of trucking. And they're commitment hobbies, I guess is the way to put it. Sorry, I got a bit of a stuffed nose. I'm trying to fucking figure out what the deal is. I'm not sick, as far as I know. I just woke up with a stuffed nose. Maybe I am getting sick. Who the fuck knows? So they're commitment hobbies. Like they're, you know, my airsoft thing. There has to be an event, and I have to have the time booked off to go do it. It's not just a hobby. Like, you know, like I ride motorcycles as well. And with riding bikes, all I really need to worry about is if the weather's nice. And I can jump on the bike and ride by myself, or maybe call up a buddy and say, hey, you free today? You want to ride bikes? If they are, great, I'll ride with a buddy. If they're not, no, I'll ride by myself. You know, that's, I guess it's just hot mic. You know, somebody, or that's what my dad does. Right? When he gets home, if he wants to go out on the bike, he goes out on the bike. He's got the advantage of his wife rides motorcycles as well. And because she works a regular day job, she's going to be home at some point, especially during the weekends. However, like I'm not married, and I don't want to be. I'm not particularly fond of, like, I don't know, I guess getting that close to people. So, and you know, any girl I dated has had zero interest in motorcycles anyway, so it's not like I'm going to have that advantage. So like my biggest hobby, I think at this point, is airsoft, and there's two groups of guys I play with. One group is in Canada, the other group is in the US, and while I love them both, I have a much more fun with my US guys. A large part of it is they're all mostly my age. You know, they're from the like early 20s to, I'm near the top of the age. Oh no, we have one or two guys that are in their 40s, but the majority of them, the average age, I think, is about 27. Right, so they're, you know, it's easier to everybody know, like references and jokes and stuff. We're all kind of on the same page. Most of my Canadian guys are in their 40s, 50s, and some are in their 60s. There's a few that are younger. But by and large, you know, that's kind of where it is, and it's interesting because there's a large difference in the personalities and mentality of the different groups. Well, like my Canadian group are a little bit more conservative, I think is the way to put it. There are a lot of gay jokes. While I don't think anybody would, like, none of them would be openly hostile or hostile in general to somebody who was openly gay that attended an event. Like, there's always the joke with a new player that they got to learn the team handshake, and everybody kind of winks at each other. When the person asks what it is, everyone pretends to pull down their pants. There's always, if somebody says something that could be misconstrued as sexual, somebody will immediately go to it. And it's usually involving, like, when you're in the discussion with other guys, so they immediately turn it into you're going to do that to them. Which, again, that's not uncommon, right? Like that's pretty standard fucking humor, especially for the age that these guys are. And there's more of a mentality, like, kids these days are fucking whiny babies and stuff. And they've got young people that come out and play, don't get me wrong. I mean, I'm certainly not the youngest at my, whopping 31 fucking years. But a lot of the people that come and play, like especially newer players, are very, very new to airsoft. Minimal experience at all. They might not necessarily have a particularly good airsoft gun. And again, it's interesting to see some things where those guys, some of the guys aren't necessarily giving them the guidance, like the new players, the guidance and the help they need. I don't want to cite stuff because I'm putting this on the internet, and, like, I don't want to shit on those guys because I do love those guys. They're the guys that I grew up playing airsoft with. They're the core group are guys that I've been playing airsoft with for, like, 10 years, 9 years. So that's quite a bit of time at this point in life to know people. Like, there was a new group that's come out. It's a husband and wife and their son, and they're like, the husband and wife are they're real firearms trained. The husband's, I think, a range officer, and the wife is looking at going into the military. The son's in cadets, and they bought airsoft guns, and when they got into airsoft, I think slightly before they met our group. So they had bought, airsoft guns from somewhere. I don't know if they bought them used or if they bought them from a different store. And there's nothing wrong with the guns they have, right? They're actually not, they're not terrible airsoft guns. But they kind of said, like, from now on, we're only buying from Dave, and these guns are junk. And a lot of it, again, is, they're not junk. It's, you don't understand them. Right, and I'm not saying that dismissively because they're new at the sport or hobby. Sport isn't really what I describe airsoft as a lot of times. It's an easier word than hobby, but it is a hobby. Like airsoft guns are they're toys, right? They're finicky toys. It's an RC car, like a remote controlled car motor, powering a set of gears that pull a piston back. When the piston gets to the end of travel, the gears have a gap in the teeth, so the piston shoots forward, which forces air down the barrel and pushes the BB out. Like, that's kind of the long and short of an airsoft gun, right? And the trigger is just an electronic contact that goes on and off. The selector fires, a lot of times nowadays it's a microchip that just determines, the position of the selector switch, and that determines how the gun is going to shoot. There are some really high-end airsoft guns. I own a few. And there are some very, very poor quality airsoft guns. And I don't own any of them, but lots of people do buy them. And the guns they bought were actually, like, they're on the lower end of the spectrum, but they're definitely not the worst. They're actually some of the most recommended beginner airsoft guns. They have probably the best value for money. And one or two of them are actually, like, higher end manufacturers that aren't as big now, but were huge when I started playing. So they're not, they didn't, it's not like they bought junk. They didn't buy, fucking Well or Jingdong airsoft guns. They bought G&G and Classic Army. So if anybody watches these, they're ever into airsoft. They bought I think they had a combat machine and 2 classic Army, just AR-15s, like the modern, I think it's the Sportline series or something like that. But they're like, you know, they're not based off of real ARs. They've got classic Army trademarks and stuff, which is, again, they're not bad. They were having issues. One of the first issues they had was magazine fitment. Again, airsoft guns are not real guns. An M16 magazine or a Stanag or an AR mag, whatever you want to call it, will, on a real firearm, typically if it's meant for 5.56 and it's meant to take NATO or AR magazines, it'll take AR magazines. Airsoft guns don't do that, right? There's tons of different tolerances and standards depending on who made it, what part of the country it was made in, and sometimes what functionality the gun has. Like for example, I've got a couple of airsoft guns by a Japanese company, right? Most airsoft guns are made in Taiwan. So I have some from Japan, and these particular guns have like a recoil function, which is, you know, negligible. But the big deal is they have, when you shoot the last BB, the gun stops shooting until you put a new magazine in and push the bolt release to, you know, emulate realism, quote unquote, a little bit. So to use those magazines with that system, you can't use regular magazines. I have an adapter that's supposed to allow me to do it, but it's still, most of the regular airsoft gun magazines they don't stay locked into the gun. You can kind of wiggle them and they'll fall out, because the actual design that locks the magazine into the gun is slightly different. You know, and again, there's lots of those kind of tolerances just in regular airsoft guns. So they were having issues with bags. So I'm like, all right, try these bags. They're pretty high end. They fit in almost everything. Lo and behold, they fit and feed fine. So we go through and figure out, okay, well, you got magazines from this company, you got a couple magazines from that company, these ones are used, and you got them from this guy. Right, so they don't all fit or work. So it's like, okay, we're playing a 10, you know, a 6v6 match. These 3 magazines work for your gun, take them. That's all you're gonna fucking need anyways. They're 150 rounds a piece. You're going out there with 450 rounds. You're good to go. Right? The other guy, okay, you got 2 mags and a mag that's got 500 rounds, a little wheel on the bottom. It's up to you what you want to do. You can use that wheel, but you probably only need that 1 magazine. And then, like, you know, they were having issues with batteries. The charger was the cable they got, the adapter for same thing. There's different plugs for different batteries. The charger they bought was wired to a battery connector called Dean's, or T-plug is the other version of it. And most of the batteries were mini Tamiya, which again is just it's a different connector and it's all Asian shit. So they had an adapter wired up, Dean's to mini Tamiya, and whoever had wired up the adapter hadn't done a particularly great job. So it was shorting out the charger, so they couldn't figure it out. It's the same thing. They're getting frustrated, and nobody's kind of helping them out. And I go over and fuck around with it, and fuck around with it. Finally, we can't get it working. But now that I'm over there, 1 or 2 other guys come over to give a hand. So that was them that determined that, like, the wiring was fucked, but nobody was, you know, kind of doing anything. So I got 5 or 6 fucking batteries that I bring every game. Here's a battery. You're good to go, right? They all fit. I make sure the batteries I got are pretty small, and no big deal, right? So again, there's a little bit of sometimes a reluctance to help out the new players that they brought in, and as a group that is really, really trying hard to bring in new players, you kind of have to something, whether it's because you're socially awkward or, you know, you just don't want to deal with it. Sometimes you got to step out of your happy place of your comfort zone and deal with people you don't know and sacrifice some of your gameplay time to help them figure their shit out. Because if you want people to keep coming back, you need to make it a welcoming community that they're going to want to remain a part of. Because in terms of the actual airsoft gameplay, they had a blast. Like, they fucking loved it. I was asking them how they were doing. Like, the first game they played took like an hour and a half, which was way too fucking long. And it was like a 5-on-5 fucking hunt. And, you know, I got worried again. A lot of newer players when something like that happens. Like, they play and they stick it out, but they're, you know, you can tell they're bored. And they fucking loved it. So the game itself, they got no issues with. And they're not, like, they were totally fine as players, so didn't do anything fucking dirty, or, you know, they didn't complain about getting shot or anything like that. It's just that, you know, little side stuff, like making sure that their guns work, and they're able to keep playing. Because again, there was once or twice in the first game, well, no, I'm out today, like my battery's dead. Well, hold the fuck on. You want to keep playing? Here's a fucking battery, right? Like again, nobody. I mean, I don't, and I think most of the guys are the same way. Like I don't want to see somebody not be able to keep playing for the day because of something silly like their battery died. Right? If I've got, again, I bring like 6 batteries, right? And I have 2 guns. And I typically can make a battery last, you know, especially with a small game like that, a battery for me will last the entire day, right? You know, big 2-day ops, I'll bring all my batteries with me, but usually still only maybe go for 2 at most. I don't shoot excessive amounts. You know, I'm not, I don't run like light machine guns or anything like that, so I'm pretty conservative with my shots. But yeah, like that's, you know, those are kind of little quibbles for that group, right? Like they've been pushing and pushing and pushing that they want to bring new people in, but they don't want to go to new fields and meet people, right? And that's kind of something, again, if you want people to come back to your party, you got to go to other parties and meet other people. Now contrast that with my American group, which are, they're, how do I put this, like I want to try to make it right, because I didn't quite explain it to the other guys. They are far more welcoming, but also slightly less stable, if that makes any sense. Right, they're all my age or younger, and I've never been around a more, like, group of, like, positive masculine reinforcement, if that makes sense. There is effectively no homophobia in the group whatsoever. Some of the members of the group are bi or gay. We have extended group members that are trans. Like, you know, nobody's particularly, like, nobody's judgmental of anyone for their sexuality or sexual orientation, right? Nobody cares. You know, and if you're a guy, you're gonna get, like, masculine reinforcement regardless. I mean, if you're a girl and you want that reinforcement, you're gonna get it too, right? I show up and everybody has, like, lines up to hug me, right? When I leave, everybody hugs each other. Everybody's, you know, there's no, like, I mean, there's less, like, it's a different kind of, like, gay joke where people will jokingly talk about doing each other in the ass. It's military humor is what it boils down to, right? Is guys talking about raw dogging each other because it might make someone else feel a little bit awkward, rather than making fun of somebody for saying something that could be construed as sexual towards another male, right? Like we're, you know, not seriously, like, referring to sexual acts with each other. And it seems, I mean, that sounds, for a lot of people, like that wouldn't be like funny or enjoyable, or whatever you want to call it. But that, again, when you're in that situation, it's, you know, it's nobody's. I've never at once felt like any of these guys want to do anything to me sexually or anything like that. It is joking, but it's a lot more positivity. However, being younger, a lot of the guys do have the kind of, a lot of the issues and, like, kind of mental issues that come with my generation and younger, where a lot of the older guys either repress or somehow manage to just not get, right? You know, a couple of the guys have issues with depression, and they kind of go through spells. You know, and I'm not going to get into any specifics or talk about anyone specifically, because that's not fair. You know, again, I'm part of their group, part of their brand at this point. And I absolutely love every one of them to death. Like, it's been a very long time since I've been into a group of friends that I care about as much as I do with these guys, which is why, again, I said, like, I like playing with my American guys more. Is, you know, they're more like me in almost every aspect, because I'm the same way. Like, you know, I go through highs and lows, and, you know, I'm very vocal, especially about my lows, right? I like to vent about my problems, which is, well, that's half the reason this fucking thing happens. And so I understand and sympathize with a lot of stuff they're going through. It's just sometimes they get mad at each other over stuff that, you know, in retrospect, it's like, man, just take a breath and, like, fucking, don't worry about it. Right? Like, so the occasional time they've said something that, you know, it, you know, it, it's, it's a different kind of, like, gay joke where people will jokingly talk about doing each other in the ass. It's, you know, they don't mean it to be offensive, but I could look at it and say that was offensive, and I just let it roll off because, again, if one of them decided they didn't like me, I'd know about it, right? It's not a, it's not like it is that kind of group of friends, right? I trust them to, if for some reason they decide that they don't fucking want anything to do with me, they'll fucking tell me about it. So again, a lot of it is just going through personal struggles and stuff, and some of them again are and I again there aren't, I'm not going to use, there's no specific situations I'm going to use, there's no specific people. It's, again, sometimes one guy will get upset at another, and again, because they're dealing with kind of their own issue at the time, right? So they kind of are a little bit more sensitive or a little bit more raw at the time, and it kind of, they're like normal, and I don't want to say guards because that's not the right word, but like their normal reception of, whether it's jokes, whether it's a comment, whether it's somebody talking about something almost completely unrelated, is not up, right? So sometimes there's no tension or friction, but sometimes they can kind of upset each other a little bit, which again I think is fairly common for people of my age range, right? My age and then younger is the age of mental illness. There are a lot of people that are having higher, and because it's my age is the age of nihilism too, and there's a lot of people that are as they're coming into adulthood, look at the world and realize that it's not really a place that they actually really want to be in, right? As a kid, you're kind of sheltered from a lot of the world, and but back in my parents' age, like the world, especially North America, was still building and thriving and flourishing, like through the 80s, the 90s. The 90s is when things started to falter, but the 80s, America was a fucking powerhouse, right? And it's after fucking, I think it was Desert Storm, it's the 92 or 93, in like the movie Black Hawk Down came from, the Battle of the Black Sea. That's when like the U.S. started to be viewed differently. And I mean Canada by extension, even though Canada wasn't involved in that conflict because we're so close to the U.S., both physically and like politically. So we've grown up with a little bit more of a nihilistic and kind of depressed outlook versus our parents, which were very optimistic and hopeful, and it was still more by the sweat of your back, or whatever the fuck the term is, by the strength of your back and the sweat in your brow, you got a little fucking fire in your belly, you're gonna get through it. Where now it's like, nah, you fucking try your ass off and somebody will fucking take it away from you, right? So that's one of the large differences, I suppose. But everybody, even when people get a little like upset with each other, they always end up hashing it out and figuring it out, and everybody is very positive and supportive. It's also a very a fairly large group of people. Like my core Canadian Airsoft group is maybe 10 guys, and like I don't have a problem referencing the group. The Gun Gamers are, I think there's like 32 members, and that's like the full-on members. That's not even counting like all of our friends that maybe are on different teams, so they're not they're not going to like become part of the Gun Gamers, or they run stores or stuff like that, so they don't want to like have affiliation that way. It's a large group of people, so anytime I go to an airsoft event in the U.S. with the Gun Gamers, I'm at minimum going with probably 8 people. I think the smallest was 8. Yeah, it was 8 because it was the couple of first hee-haws. The Milsim West we went, which is one of, if not the largest airsoft event in the U.S. It's certainly the most realistic. We showed up, I think we had 15 players, and then like the rest of our platoon was formed of like another squad that we've been communicating with. So they've been kind of like added to our, they're not in the Gun Gamers. Like again, there's I think a difference between the Gun Gamers as like the media channel and the Gun Gamers as the fucking friends that like to drink with each other and play airsoft. So they are, that whole squad is effectively more than welcome to come with us at every Milsom West. And a few of them we've tricked into doing our Task Force Keg, which is a 1990, or 2006 or 2012 to 2014 10th Mountain Division impression. I think the only reason we specifically went with that date was it was when they were going between, and I can't remember the U.S. military designations for them, but ACU, which is that fucking kind of relish-looking light blue, gray fucking camouflage that the National Guard, I think, still uses because they don't need to fucking hide in anything. And multicam, which I think was OCP to UCP, and I think multicam is now called Scorpion. I think it's the U.S. changes. The U.S. picks their own designation for anything. That's why, it confused me for a little bit. The new officially adopted U.S. sidearm is the M17, but it is a 6-hour, it's something else in the civilian world. So the, like you say, the M4 is an AR-15. It's a Colt AR-15, but the U.S. military designation is M4. Where was I? Oh, fuck. The designations. Oh, I can't remember. I drew a blank. Oh. The idea was because a lot of 90% of the guys in the group, and this is not just the gun gamers, this is like the keg is already at like 50 people or something like that. 90% of any American airsofter has multicam. Right? It has been the most popular camouflage pattern both in the real world and the airsoft, like paintball world, for pretty much immediately after the U.S. started adopting it, because it's a very, very effective pattern. And while there might be more patterns now that are more effective, I think a lot of the more effective ones are more effective in specific situations. Multicam, I think, is still the most effective general use camouflage pattern. Right? It'll work almost anywhere. So because of that, because of your transitioning to multicam, you can get away with wearing a multicam BDU, and a massive majority of IOTVs, which are, I can't remember what the fucking term for them is. They're, excuse me, I'm gonna fucking delete files on my fucking. This thing's supposed to, this dash cam is supposed to, just delete as it records, but for some reason, most of the ones I've had don't. It will, but it doesn't do it. It almost doesn't delete the old information, how do I put it? It doesn't delete the old data as fast as it records new data, so it eventually fills up. Okay, so where was I? So, most IOTVs now, they're switching to multicam, and I think they're moving out of the IOTV anyways. But most of the ones you can find for sale are the old ACU pattern. So the only real kind of time period where you can get away with having a mismatch of colors is like 2012 or 2010 to 2014. So we're like, all right, that works. Milsom West is typically, I think it's supposed to be like a contemporary conflict, but I think a lot of people have argued it's like mid-early 2000s. So it doesn't really matter as long as you're not like showing up in fucking World War II outfit, you're fine. There's kit requirements, but they've never really stated you need to be, like the guys that run German KSK, which they might not anymore because apparently KSK has a lot of there's a lot of racism in it. I don't think there was a requirement that they had to run like 2020 KSK, right? They're probably running 1996 or 2005 units. Again, the unit it's old enough that they could get all of the gear for it to do the impression. Because again, most, contrary to popular belief, most, especially any sort of special forces, most of the equipment they use isn't available to the civilian population until, at least several years after, if not after the unit has stopped using that piece of equipment. So, having this group of guys that we go out with is really, really awesome. The hee-haws are a blast. There's usually a night or two of drinking involved, and they're just a good bunch of guys, right? I love them all, and I don't say that about people a lot. Like, I love my family members, but I typically don't, especially like when it's not to their face. I usually, like, if somebody, a buddy tells me, "Oh man, I love you, man," I will always tell them, "Oh, I love you too, buddy," even though I shouldn't say that the sentiment isn't real. It's just I wouldn't be the one to say I love you, man. You know what I mean? I'm not. I typically keep a lot of my friends at arm's length. Again, as you get older, like, people change, or you discover that people are your best buddies have like wildly different beliefs than you do, and all of a sudden you don't really want to associate with them. Things change. Where these guys, I mean, again, I don't think I'm any closer to any of them than I am to a lot of friends, especially not because they're probably my physically most distant friends. But they're all just such good people, and it's just, I do love them. They're good guys, right? So it's just a different group that I find I really, really click with and really enjoy spending time with, whether we're playing airsoft or not. It is weird because, and I've commented on it when I've been with them, right? Most of it's kind of by extension of me keeping people at arm's length. For the last, I want to say, 5 or 8 years of my life, all of my social groups, and especially like my friend circles, have been built around me. And I don't want to sound, there's no way to say this without sounding conceited or egotistical, but my groups of friends are typically, it's a group of people that gather around me because they all like me, and they grow, like, they either like each other too, or they put up with each other, let's say, for me. And again, I know that sounds conceited, right? And it's not my intention. Like, I'm happy that I can bring people together, but I also understand that I'm not God's gift of fucking socialization, right? That's not what I'm getting at. I guess what I am getting at in some way is that I've always had some manner of control over the social group I'm in, because typically I'm the quote-unquote leader of the social group, right? So, like, I always, the reason I know this is, like, I had a conversation with one of my buddies who, same thing, I haven't talked to in a while, because he's got a real job, and it's like my original kind of gaming buddies, they've all started, like, working jobs that have them, they work in afternoons or evenings instead of during the day, or they work weekends, so we just haven't gotten together as much. He had said the one time, like, honestly, man, like, you're the reason most of us play with each other. And he said, like, even when we play, and if you're not there, we don't talk to each other anywhere near as much, right? There's no jokes, there's no, like, we don't talk anywhere near as much, whether it's socializing, whether it's communicating in the game or anything like that. He said, like, it's really like when you're there that we all open up and start not just joking with, like, you as in me, but with each other, right? And I was like, okay, like that, and that's, that was where I kind of looked at, like, well, no shit, like, it makes sense, because a lot of groups, even if I've entered the group after it was already established, there's been a few groups where after I left, the group dissipated. And it's not that I left, it's, again, either my especially with video games, right? Like a lot of guys, like Arma was the big one. I fucking love Arma 3. But I'll go for, like, periods of 6 months to over a year where I don't play it. Arma 3 is a large, cumbersome game that typically requires a lot of time input. Like, it doesn't matter what I fucking do. I sit down and play that game with friends, I'm there for 4 fucking hours at a minimum, right? I run ops with the group I used to be with, where they're half the day, and it slowly started to get to, we do ops every Sunday, and then it was like, okay, but you need to be there for them. It's like, no. I always remember one guy, I can't remember what it was, I couldn't attend, and I told him why, and I was told that wasn't an excuse. And I was like, okay, no, bye. It wasn't that I ditched the group, because, again, the guy that said it, he's still my friend on Facebook, he's a good guy, he worded it wrong, but at that point, like, you know, in my head, I've got to prove a point, right? It's like, okay, no, I'm not available anymore. And then, like I said, I moved on to other interests. That was when I got into truck driving and started playing the trucking simulators. And then once I became a real-life truck driver, almost everything, like, gaming related, like, it kind of, not gaming itself took a back seat, but the games I played changed, right? You know, most of the, like, after Arma is when I established this group of friends that I just was talking about, where, you know, they talked about how I'm kind of the linchpin of the group. My Arma group, they stopped playing altogether. They all kind of split apart. Like, some of them get together, but the whole group kind of dissipated. And again, it's one of those things, and I hope to God that it's not because of me. I hope to God that I'm not the center point of that group. But I noticed, and again, maybe it's hard to notice because, you know, I only see when they interact with me when I'm there, obviously. But, you know, I watch videos from ops when I wasn't there, and again, they communicate with each other less, and there's less joking around and camaraderie than when I'm there, at least how I perceive it. And they're all friends, but I seem to, because I tell jokes, and I'm typically not, like, especially on the internet, I'm not shy, right? I will strike up conversations with people. I will joke around with people. I will tease people, whether I know them or not. And it inspires other people. I shouldn't say inspires, it encourages other people to do the same. So again, I've seen footage of guys when they're alone and guys when they're with me, and when they're with me, they're joking around with each other a little more as well, right? It's not just everybody's involved with me, it's everybody gets more involved with each other. So like I said, I genuinely hope that I was not the linchpin of that group, because again, they were a great bunch of guys, and I kind of stopped playing Arma for a while. I still have Arma, I still play it. It's just like, you know, I don't have the same level of time commitments that I did back then to do anything more than hop into a random server and, you know, shoot bad guys for a little bit. So, you know, and my you know, the group that I made after that, we were really close. We did a lot of stuff, like played a lot of games together and stuff. And the same thing, it just kind of, we all got, like, at the time, I think one or two of them weren't working, or one guy was working at Walmart, so he had lots of free time, and the other guy, I think, was in fucking school. And one side, like I said, now they both work. Like, no one but Eli, I think he's got 2 fucking jobs at this point. AJ works at a factory, so again, they're busy. So I play with, you know, a couple of my real life friends. Like, we play a lot of Elite Dangerous. You know, nobody really plays the American Truck Sim online anymore. I got a couple of guys that do, but again, they're all real truck drivers, so finding time together is fucking hard. But you know, this Airsoft group was the first group in a very long time that I had come into from the outside, right? The group already had the lead guy, the center guy, right, which is Eric, or E-House is kind of, it's not a call sign, that seems cheesy, but that's what people have always called him, E-House, you know, Eric Houseneck. Eric is the face of the YouTube channel, right? Again, he'll be the first one to say that it's a group effort. It's supposed to be a group effort, but he has put the most effort into, you know, filming and putting reviews out. So at this point, he is the quote-unquote celebrity, right? And again, it's Airsoft, it's fucking BB guns. I don't think anybody's a celebrity, but within the community, there are celebrities, right? You know, Jet, or Desert Fox Airsoft, he doesn't have a day job anymore. He makes a living off of Airsoft and filming it and reviewing it. He runs a couple of events. And you can see the kind of people fawning over some of these guys, kind of like movie stars. It's nowhere near the same level. Within the isolated Airsoft community, like, you get celebrities, right? So Eric is, again, none of us would call him a celebrity because we're his friends, but he's a celebrity. So because of that, people who typically kind of come into the group came in because of Eric, or because they like Eric, or they started socializing with Eric because he was the face of the YouTube channel. And you know, at that, because he has the leadership role in the group. And again, I'm not saying that to shit on anybody else in the group. I think there are probably a few people in the group that might not like somebody stating that there's a leadership role, right? And it's because it's not like he's guiding anyone on what they should do or anything like that. It's just, Eric is the guy that he's the one that mostly communicates with stuff like sponsors or other groups of players, because most other people want to talk to Eric because he's, again, quote unquote, a celebrity. So a lot of coming into this group, or most of the people kind of revolve around Eric versus me, was different, right? Because I haven't done that since high school, and I was pretty awkward in high school, so it was kind of weird for once to come into a social circle where now my social skills are kind of more normally developed, because I was very awkward and antisocial through high school and into my early 20s, and it's only into my late 20s and 30s that I've become a lot more comfortable with myself, to a point where I can strike up conversations with anybody and typically fairly quickly establish friendships. And I forgot what it was like to have people who would, even though they like me, would still prioritize their closer friends over me. Because again, this is a social group that's been, like, even though Gun Gamers has only been around for 5 or 6 years, I don't even think that long. Well, if you count Lulsoft and Executive Outcomes, the core group of guys, some of them have known each other since high school, right? like 8 to 10 years at this point. So obviously, those guys are always going to prioritize their closest friends over new friends, and that's like, it's not anything like serious. It's mostly conversational, right? I found a lot of times, like, people would drop the conversation with me because one of the other guys who's a much closer friend has something to say, right? So, and it's also like Americanisms, right? Guys don't really have a problem interrupting each other as much as Canadians, and Canadians are, some guys will stand there for fucking 20 minutes waiting to get the word in before they finally say something, where Americans typically they'll fucking say it. They'll talk over you if they have to. So, it's interesting to be in a social group where I'm not the focal point. It doesn't all revolve around me. And again, I guess it's a good lesson in making, like, it's good at keeping me humble isn't the right word, but like to prevent me from getting like too conceited, right? Because now I have like issues with, I don't like not being somebody in power. So, for example, like Discord, right? A lot of people know Discord, especially people watching this. If you're in American Truck Sim, like, there's lots of Discord servers and stuff. The Discord, like, I'm using most of the Discords I'm in, I'm an admin, right? Or it's my Discord. So because of that, like, what was I going to say here? I'm used to having the power to like ban somebody if they're being really disruptive, but B, also being like easily identifiable as one of the guys, right? I'm one of the it guys, or, you know what I mean? So like recently, like, I, again, getting into more trucking stuff, I bought in American Truck Sim, the guy released a mod. So it was a 389 that he put a lot of work into. He got a lot of customization. It was not a cheap mod, but I was like, nah, fuck it. He's a friend at this point on Facebook. I wanted to support him. And it is a great mod. I've been actually playing the game a lot more lately because of it. But he created a Discord, so everybody got in, and he had a Facebook group. And he has two guys that I are friends with, and we're all in kind of a Facebook chat together as admins. And like, I'm sitting there like, I want to be an admin, and I might not do that much, but it's like I don't like other people having power over me, even if they never use it, right? I want to be at least in a position, even if it's not because I want power over others, I don't want people having power over me. So it's the same with the Discord, right? There's the two guys are admins, and I fucking told them I'll be an admin. Like, I'm pretty good at being an admin in the Discords I'm an admin in. But he has his own people, and he doesn't want to use me even though we're friends. And it's like, it annoys me more than I thought it would, because I've become accustomed to being in charge, right? At least to some extent. So going to not being in charge, again, is unusual for me. So this is gonna suck. I think my cabin air filter is a bit clogged, so I keep, like, after a while, my air vents don't blow any air. And obviously opening the window means that nobody will hear anything I say, so I'll just have to be a little bit uncomfortable, I guess. Yeah, so they, like, it's a good exercise in making sure that, like, I understand that I'm not always the center of attention. I'm not always the center of a group. I mean, it doesn't stop the fact that, like, I want to be more involved in things. Like, I won't lie. Like, I'm mildly, and I'm not annoyed at anyone, but I am annoyed that I'm not part of the podcast as much. They do a podcast. I've been on it a few times. Because of COVID right now, like, Gun Gamers has kind of switched from, like, and there's still videos. Eric still puts out, like, video reviews and stuff, but we've been doing a lot of podcasts. And the problem is again the makeup of the group. Like, Ian runs the podcast, and a lot of people forget that. It'll be a podcast where it's Ian and nobody else, and everyone's, like, asking Eric questions. Like, Eric's not here, bro. So Ian puts a lot of work into running the podcast, and obviously Ian is going to be on the podcast. Ian's made very good friends with a Les Trooper, Kaylee. So the podcast is kind of their thing. They're like the co-hosts. Ian wants no more than 6 people on the podcast at a time. So you then end up with Eric will always get a spot if he wants it, because, again, it's the channel is effectively his brand. Corey is kind of right behind Eric when it comes to, if he wants in on it, he's going to get in on it. And again, I'm not saying that to shit on any of them. That's just how it is, right? So that's 4 spots already taken. So oftentimes, now lately, a lot of it has been bringing guests onto the show. So that's another slot. So there's usually at most 1 free slot. So that's kind of where, like, everybody else in the group gets their, if they want to be on the podcast, gets to be on the podcast. So it's, again, it depends on what it is. A lot of the guys have no interest in being on it. I enjoy it. I actually like being on YouTube and, like, kind of putting myself out there, because I don't really give a shit, like, if people watch it or not. It's fun to do. I guess there is a little bit of me that, like, wants, like, people to look at me and say, wait, aren't you Dan from Gun Gamers? Right? Like, again, the immediate recognition that Eric gets is kind of something that I want to experience for myself. Not necessarily out of ego, but it'd just be interesting to have somebody recognize me for that, right? It'd be I want to experience what that feels like, I guess. So, like last, and again, it gets tricky when there's a guest that a lot of people might want a chance to talk to. So, for example, Thursday, we had the guitarist Tom Smith from the Acacia Strain, which, again, a lot of truck drivers probably don't know the Acacia Strain, because a lot of truck drivers are, like, country music swinging hillbillies. The Acacia Strain has become a very successful and very popular. Like they're hardcore. One of the guys described them as deathcore, and Tom says no, we're not. But they're like a hardcore metal band, right? So in the metal scene, they're very big, and the rest of the world, like pop music, they're not. But it was the single biggest guest we've ever had on the podcast. I think because it's an airsoft show, when we had Josh Warren, who runs Milsim West, on, we had a lot more views. But in terms of, like, who has the most renown and who is actually the bigger celebrity. You know, no offense to Josh, but it was Tom. So we also, then they originally, Joe, which is another guy in the group, Acacia Strain is his favorite band. He's fucking loved those guys for forever. So he wanted to be on the podcast. I wanted to be on the podcast. I only kind of half-heartedly wanted to, like, I wanted to talk guitar shit with Tom, right? It'd be fun to talk to a famous guitarist about guitar stuff and nerd out about guitars with him, because I play guitar as well. But I wasn't, like, I like the Acacia Strain, but I'm not like a super fan, so I was going to let Joe have it. And as far as we knew, Joe was going to be on the podcast. And then the night before, he enlists the lineup, and it's Kaylee, who has she's never listened to the Acacia Strain that I was talking to her. And, you know, she's into classic rock, and not Joe. And it was like, well, you know, what? I think Joe was upset. He didn't really say that he was, but again, so it's one of those things where it gets tricky if you want to be on the podcast, because there's already an established group of people that are kind of like first in line to be on it. And Ian typically asks me to be on if he can't, like, if the people he was going to have on can't be on, which, like, if you know, in a way is kind of insulting. But I also, like, I don't take offense to it, because, you know, I understand, like, I'm not really anybody, right? Even you know, I'm not necessarily within the group, like, they all value me as friends, but I'm, you know, the other guys have been part of the Gun Gamers for a lot longer, and therefore are far more known as, like, social media personalities, right? I'm not. So I understand that, like, you know, and then a lot of the time, like, I'm getting better because I'm spending more time around them and learning more, but, you know, a few of the podcasts they were on, like, we started talking airsoft, and I genuinely, half the time, I don't have enough knowledge on new products or tactics, especially gear, right? I know a fair bit about airsoft guns, but not a lot about tactical gear, to really weigh in on anything. So I'm kind of just there filling space. You know, some of the podcasts I've been able to contribute a lot more, and I'm getting better at it, but I'm also, you know, not there as an established media personality. And so that's kind of the thing, right? It's typically the guys with the most social media representation are the first guys on the podcast, because those are the guys that people want to see. Those are the guys that the fans want to see, right? And I understand that, and I respect that. That's why I'm not offended that I'm, like, kind of a second line podcast member, because, again, I'm not the brand, right? I'm not E-House, I'm not Corey, I'm not the guys that were part of the podcast from the get-go. However, I mean, it is still, like, kind of, like, you know, disheartening, or whatever you want to call it, but it is what it is. Like, what was I going to say? Like, we also had Aaron Pounds, who, Aaron runs Airsoft Junkies, and is also a drummer in the metal band Void Eater. So it's the same thing. They had 2 guests on, so that only left 4 slots. So the 4 slots were taken. Eric and Corey are huge Acacia Strain fans as well. So again, it was a no-brainer. Like, I was not going to be on that podcast regardless, unless, like, Ian had decided he really wanted to upset, like, piss Joe off and have me on and not him. But then I probably would ask, like, maybe we should put Joe on first, right? Because, again, while I love guitar playing and love the chance to, you know, A, to talk to a fairly big celebrity, but B, top guitar with a fairly big guitar player. I'm not a super fan. I was not a humongous fan of the band. I mean, I liked them, but I wasn't, you know, enamored with them like some of the guys. Now, Tom is good friends with Matt Heafy, and I reached out to Matt Heafy to see if he'll come on. And he, of course, again, he's huge, so he probably didn't even bother to look at my message, which is fine. Like, again, they got other shit they gotta worry about. But if he comes on, if he agrees to come on, there's no way I'm not being on the fucking podcast, because I'm a much bigger fucking Trivium fan. But again, we'll fucking basically cross that bridge when we get to it, kind of thing. If that ever happens, if he ever gets back to me about being on. don't know, I kind of rambled a lot on this fucking video about all kinds of shit that had nothing to do with trucking, really. But, if you haven't figured out, I like airsoft quite a bit, so that's a large part of it. But yeah, like the overall, again, when some of the stuff I've said might sound like I'm being like super critical of the gun gamers and stuff, and it's not. Like I said, it's a weird thing to try to explain, like, without sounding exaggerated or sounding over dramatic. Right? Again, conveying feelings into words is oftentimes difficult. Right? Because again, I've never once been really upset that I wasn't on the podcast. It's just, I would like to be on the podcast more, but I don't get upset when I'm not, if that makes any sense, right? It's I'm still, I think, technically the newest member of the Gun Gamers. Well, I guess Kaylee technically, but Kaylee's also established her own brand for a while, so it's not really I don't know how you'd put it. I think her and Ian have been friends for a while, but again, it's also that one where it was Ian that asked the rest of the group if I, if like he's the one that petitioned the vote to have me into the Gun Game. So, I'm not shitting on Ian or anything like that, right? Because it was either him or Corey that asked about me being in the group, and we brought into the the actual Gun Gamers Facebook chat, which qualifies me as being in the Gun Gamers or whatever. So, and like I said, it's been such a good group of friends that they have a lot of fun with, and that's where I want to. I'm hoping too that the quarantine stuff gets lifted in the near future, because I've got 2 events next month with the guys, and as it stands, I'm pretty positive the first one I'm not going to be able to go to, which is American Milsims Eastern Front. It's in, I think it's in fucking New York. No, it's in Zulu 24, yeah, New York. Because it's, I think, the first or second weekend. It's the first weekend of August. And then Omega Productions Desolation 3, which is the one I want to go to absolutely above anything else, because I love those events, and I'm technically staff, so would like to go and help my guys, is the last weekend of August, or second last weekend. Well, it's the 21st and the 23rd, so probably, yeah, it's probably the second last weekend. So, I can't go to those. Like, there might be some fucking bullshit I could do to make Desolation 3 a job so essential, because I'm going there for work. I am technically going there for work and not to play, but I'm going to a paintball game with all my paintball guns there on airsoft. But I'm definitely going there as a job. It's hard to sell that, right? And again, it's kind of silly. Like, in this truck, I can cross the border all I want, but as soon as I'm in my personal vehicle, I'm not allowed to cross. And while I appreciate the rules, because again, the U.S. is now has the single highest number of cases of anywhere in the world. Like, I had the numbers yesterday. 3 U.S. states, and I can't remember which ones they were. I know Florida was one of them. It was probably Florida, New York, and California. Each state's population is higher than the entire population of Canada. And all 3 states had between 4,000 and 6,000 new cases yesterday. The entire 39.7 million person population of Canada had 256 cases yesterday total. So again, if you look at the countries border each other, one country has not under control, but is having far fewer cases than the other. And again, you look at the differences. Canada has now required masks. Almost every county, you must wear a mask in public. Like, you are not, like, you'll be physically barred from stores if you do not have a mask on. Where the U.S. is still, it's my right, I do what I want. Like, I had a guy last night, I went into the truck stop, I wore my mask, nobody said anything. I leave the truck stop, and I'm taking my mask off because I'm outdoors now. I can maintain, like, it's easier to maintain distance. And a truck driver who was walking into the truck stop said, "Good, that thing won't save your life anyways." And I just told him to mind his fucking business and walked away. And he said something, like I couldn't hear him at that point. The fucking truck's rumbling and shit. But it's like, you know, again, like now, store employees in the States are being trained on conflict resolution, right? Because there are people, there are both, like there are two different kinds of people going on right now. There are people who are getting violent because they're being told by staff to wear a mask and they refuse. And there are people who are getting violent with customers who are getting violent with each other because, and again, it has gone both ways. Like people with masks are giving people without masks shit, but I've also seen that people without masks are giving people with masks shit, and are again, it somebody touches somebody else and it turns into a fucking brawl. The one I had read, it was from the guy with the mask. He'd given the guy without a mask I guess a dirty look, and the guy without a mask accosted him and then tried to rip the guy's mask off his face. So the guy with the mask just started fucking pisting in his fucking fist in the guy's head and, you know, knocked him the fuck out. But that's what's going on is like there are two, like the older I get, the more and more disdain, as the rest of the world does, the more and more disdain I have for Americans. And I realize that a lot of the people who watch my channel are Americans and they're not going to like to hear a lot of this, but that's the way it is. Most of the rest of the world is laughing at the U.S., is laughing at how Americans behave, is laughing at your political leaders, and a lot of Americans, who cares, we're the toughest. And it's like, the problem is that you're not. Like, the U.S. claims, you know, again, the U.S. probably does have the largest military, but if you nuke the rest of the world, even if the rest of the world doesn't nuke you don't have enough supplies on your own, right? And guaranteed, the U.S. can launch nukes, the rest of the world will nuke the U.S. Like, it doesn't matter, you know, being a nuclear superpower doesn't make a difference, because it doesn't matter who nukes whom, the world will end, so nobody wins, right? So you pull that off the table. So the U.S. has the biggest military. Okay, well, what are you going to do with it, right? Are you going to invade Canada because we don't like your president? I mean, I guess you could try. Canada has a lot of allies, right? We're part of NATO, we're part of the UN, or well, not the UN, NATO. You know, and again, it's a lot of the issues. America's gone from doing to boasting, and that's it, right? It used to be, again, all through the beginning of the 20th century and into the mid 20th century, America was the place to be, right? Everything was happening, things were moving ahead. America was the hub of, you know, like social and like scientific growth. And now America's kind of at the point where, like, yeah, we're the best. They don't do anything to prove that they're the best. They just tell everyone they're the best, right? And I think a lot of Americans don't see or don't want to see what the rest of the world thinks. And again, because a lot of them dismiss the rest of the world as unimportant. But the unfortunate reality is that's not the case, right? The rest of the world is very important, because the rest of the world outnumbers the U.S. You know, whatever, I don't know the number of countries, but basically, you know, the entirety of the world to one. And the U.S. might, again, the U.S. can say, like, they're the biggest bully, but if all the kids on the schoolyard start fucking punching the bully in the head, the bully probably gonna get his ass kicked, right? So again, a lot of Americans, and again, it's with each other. I don't even know why I went on the political thing. Americans, again, have this mindset, like, you know, I'm going to do what I want to do, right? It's my rights. And the mask is the biggest one right now, because a lot of Americans, especially, again, primarily ones that don't want to wear a mask, believe that people wear a mask to protect themselves, right? And that's not the issue, or that's not the case, right? And that's the problem, right? Is that people who are wearing masks are doing so to try not to get others sick, and the people not wearing masks are the ones that are going to get the people with masks sick, right? And that's, you know, almost, again, where, like, part of me is like, nah, fuck it, I'm not going to wear a mask, because if you're going to wander around with no mask on and breathe all over me and potentially get me sick, I'm going to fucking do it to you, But, you know, I also morally don't want to do that, even if, you know, I like mentally do. So again, that's the problem. And Americans don't have a problem with accosting somebody over. Like, it's the same thing with that truck driver. Like, if it turned into an argument, he was a fucking like 50, 60-year-old fucking man, scraggly, skinny, lives off a diet of fucking cigarettes and coffee. Like, if I got him in my fucking hands, I'd probably fucking kill the guy. Right? I'm fucking 3 times his size and probably half his age. But he shoots his mouth off. And it's like, again, I mean, I guess he called it right because I just fucking left it and walked away. But if I turned around and fucking went after him, the guy would have had the fucking shit kicked out of him. And it's, again, Americans have that fucking poke the bear mentality. Where it's like the rest of the world, like, you know, if our, especially not necessarily if our political officials, but if our health officials tell us to wear a mask, wear a mask. Like, you don't need to believe the president or the politicians, but the doctors and like the scientific community they have no agenda to advance by suggesting you wear a mask. And that's what Americans think, right? So they're controlling you. How is it controlling you? It's not a muzzle. I can talk through it. I can breathe through it. Right? It is none of those things. And I think a lot of Americans, well, it shows to them your willingness to comply. It's like, but what does that do? Right? What does even again, let's use a hypothetical scenario. It's a test to see who's willing to comply. What is the plan? Like, you know, is it that some, you know, is the Illuminati or whatever so stupid that they think if I'm going to comply to wearing a mask because it's for public safety, then I'm going to comply with, you know, getting a fucking subdermal implant that fucking controls my brain function. Like, you know, again, there's a pretty big jump between wearing a mask for safety and doing something that would like give up your free will or, you know, your self-control. And, you know, that's a very large jump, right? And again, that's really not what's going on here. Like, and again, I don't know, it's just the same mindset that where like flat earthers come from, that doctors in the scientific community are lying because they're trying to advance some agenda of their own. But like, again, what agenda do they stand to advance by getting everyone to wear masks? Right? And again, because I've seen the mindset, oh, they're fucking cutting off your oxygen supply. Like, motherfucker, doctors and or nurses wear masks for hours upon hours. Right? They're the same masks that we're wearing. And they wear them for fucking hours. And they're fine. They don't cut off your air supply. They don't negatively affect you. They're mildly uncomfortable. Like, you know, don't get me wrong. They are a nuisance or irritating. But they're not, you know, they're not cutting off your air supply or, you know, turning you into a fucking retard or something like that. You know, now again, you can buy masks that are heavier, that are a little more restrictive. Like, I've got 2 masks. You can kind of see the one there. It's a thicker material, and it does make it a little bit harder to breathe. But I've also got the paper mask, and that I found like I can breathe through that fine. I don't notice almost any difference. So, you know, there's no negative. Again, I can understand if somebody has asthma or respiratory difficulty already, that's one thing, right? But I don't like seeing people, well, it's my right to not wear a mask. It's like, it's your right to get me sick, and the response is, yep. And again, then what do? Like, you either fucking just accept that this guy is totally comfortable with you getting sick and possibly dying and leave it, or you say, nah, fuck you, I'm gonna get you sick, and fucking take your mask off, and then you're just as fucking bad as he is, right? And again, it's funny because a lot of Americans, again, they think their rights project into the void, and it doesn't. I think it's about a month ago, I crossed back into Canada, the Detroit-Windsor border, the Ambassador Bridge, And I ended up shooting the shit with the border, like the security officer behind the desk. She was kind of cute, so I'm trying my luck here. And she was talking about like the previous day. Like there are signs at the booths now. Like if you have no mask, like if you're not wearing a mask, they won't even open the window to interact with you. And if you do not physically have a mask, I'm not sure what they do, because they can't just wave you through. They have to take your information. So it might mean that they provide you with one, or you get instructed to turn around and go back to the U.S. She wasn't sure what the protocol was either, but a truck driver came up and he wasn't wearing a mask, and she indicated to him that he had to wear a mask because he had a mask that was hanging from the CD radio, and he shook his head no. So I guess she caved a little bit, opened the window, and told him he needed to wear his mask. He said no. She said, why not? He said, it violates my First Amendment rights. She laughed. She's like, sir, your amendment rights stopped 500 feet back on the center of that bridge. You are in Canada now. You abide by Canadian law, or you can turn around and go the fuck back to the U.S. So he ended up wearing his mask. He wasn't happy about it. It violated his rights. But again, he doesn't realize, like, he failed to realize that your American rights do not extend outside of America, right? When you come into Canada, you have Canadian rights and freedoms, right? And that's why, like, a lot of Americans don't like the fact, I can't carry my gun into Canada. That's right, because you cannot shoot somebody with that gun in Canada. You're not legally allowed to have a firearm on your person like that. Guess what? Don't come to Canada then. And most guys don't. That's why so many truck, I won't go to Canada. That's fine. There's lots of freight that needs to go there, and that means I got plenty of fucking work. Right? I mean, like this fucking load. I'm taking this to the Georgia to be painted, and then it's got to go back to fucking Canada at some point. I might not be the one to take it back, but as far as I know, it goes back. So, it might be going somewhere in the States too. I don't know. We get a lot of stuff to New Mexico that goes out and comes back. But again, it's and I get into arguments. I shouldn't say get into arguments. Like, I get a lot of people on Facebook kind of bringing the same thing, right? One guy put a quote from it was a sign with a chick, and of course she had the communist hammer and sickle in the center of a mask drawn on the sign. It's like, well, if your mask works all great and keeps you safe, then why do I need one? It's like, because mine keeps you safe. It does not keep me safe. That's not the point, right? And again, I think a lot of people, like, I've started using the fucking piss your pants analogy, right? If I'm naked and you're naked, and I walk up and I piss on you, you're 100% covered in my piss, right? If I'm naked and you're wearing pants and I walk up and piss on you, your pants are going to stop some of the piss, but you're still mostly covered in my piss. If I'm wearing pants and you're wearing pants and I walk up and piss on you, I just pissed my pants and you get nothing on you, right? And that's effectively how masks work. Right. Again, if you, in the wintertime, if you look at your exhalation, how far your breath moves from ahead of you. If you put a mask on, and all it's doing is stopping your breath from shooting straight out ahead of you. Right? And it's effectively directing your exhalation to the sides, and it stops a lot of its momentum, right? So you get a cloud around your face, and that's it. So you're projecting your potentially, contaminated or COVID-infected air nowhere near as far. Like, that's all it does, right? And I think that's also where it's not going to save your life mindset comes from. That's if both parties are wearing a mask, it is far less likely for either to get sick, right? And again, I always worry about being asymptomatic. Like, if I get it and don't show symptoms, I'm still contagious, but I don't know that I'm sick. If I just choose to wear a mask, it's a lot less likely that I'll get somebody else sick accidentally, right? And again, even at the end of it all, mind your business. Like, if you don't want to wear a mask, that's great, buddy. You fucking want big pee-pee over there, but don't fucking come over here and give me shit for wearing them. I'll do whatever the fuck I want. Same argument you're going to use for not wearing a mask is why I'm wearing a mask. It's a free fucking country. Off the road, bird. There you go. So this has obviously gotten very, very fucking long. So I'm gonna wrap this up here and probably film another one right away. Send it out, start doing content so that I've got multiple bits of content, to drop over the week instead of filming and then trying to upload, and then filming the next day and trying to upload. I'll get like 6 videos together and then fucking upload them throughout the week, so I don't have to fucking do it later. All right, kids, have fun, make good choices, wear your fucking mask, and don't lick fucking doorknobs.